In tonight's Political Insider, the first GOP debate later this week. The top 10 Republican candidates will be in Cleveland, laying out their vision in prime time for the nation's future. But there's an event happening before the big matchup that will include more voices. For more, we turn to our guest tonight, Rebecca Sinderbrand, political news editor for the Washington Post. Rebecca, 14 of the 17 Republican candidates are scheduled to participate in this forum tonight in New Hampshire, but it's not as hotly as anticipated as the debate. Why not? What's the format?
Well, all the candidates are going to be on the same stage tonight, but not at the same time. You know, they're going to be speaking one after the other. The first time we're going to see them together on the same stage will be in Cleveland, of course, on Thursday night. Some of the senators tonight, who are the Senate candidates in the field, the presidential field, are actually going to be speaking from Washington, D.C., and so you won't necessarily have the entire field gathered together there.
So it's going to be interesting because tonight, you're right, it's not really a debate, it's a forum. 5 minutes talk. We want to see them go at it, let's face it. So the big anticipation, Thursday night, the debate. But before we even get to that, let's talk about Donald Trump for this forum in New Hampshire. He's refusing to go, and he said it's because of the Manchester Union leader. What's that all about? That's right.
The Manchester Union leader has had some coverage, and in particular, one article in particular that Donald Trump took exception to that has been pretty tough, pretty critical of Donald Trump. And of course, you know, the Manchester Union leader, its editorial board, a more conservative paper. So it's interesting that Donald Trump and the Manchester Union leader, the leading Republican candidate in New Hampshire, and one of the leading conservative editorial voices in New Hampshire are at odds.
He's kind of taking his toys and going home because he doesn't like the way they're playing. I don't know how well that's going to play with voters in New Hampshire. They're used to hearing from candidates going door to door and not deciding when and where they'll show up in New Hampshire and whether or not they approve of how the newspaper is handling things.
Oh, they absolutely do. Voters in New Hampshire expect individual attention. You will meet voters in New Hampshire who will say, you know, I'm not going to make up my mind until I meet all the candidates in person and get to ask them questions. So they expect that kind of attention. And of course, while the candidates will not be on the same stage at the same time tonight, we do expect to see some attacks. We've heard some candidates jabbing each other by name. Of course, expect to hear Donald Trump's name quite often, even though he's not there.
Now, let's look ahead. They have been staying away so far from the mudslinging against Donald Trump. The way that the format is structured on Thursday night, the only time that candidates will get extra time is if somebody criticizes them by name. So I have a feeling we'll hear Donald Trump's name a lot at this forum in New Hampshire, but they won't be criticizing him by name Thursday night, do you think? Or they'll just be giving him extra time to respond? Do you think? How do you think they'll handle it?
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting because you talk to these campaigns and they all either say that they have a Trump strategy, or they'll say that their strategy is just to pretend he's not there to the extent that they can. You can expect to see probably those who are going to be, you know, engaging with Trump, not necessarily to be directing attacks at him, but to be directing attacks in such a way that no one can mistake who the target actually is. No one wants to see this turn into the Donald Trump show, except Donald Trump, but there's a very big chance that it could.
Oh, I would love for it too. I love watching him on the air. I just can't stop watching. One more question I can't resist about the Donald, and then we're going to switch to the Democrats. You all did a very good article that got a lot of attention over the weekend, laying out at length all of the different things he says he would do as president, but they didn't all add up. He says he would build this huge fence across the border and other things, but he would be lowering taxes while increasing all of these different programs. Kind of lay out what you thought the key points were in the article about what he's promising versus what's realistic that he could deliver.
Well, you know, a lot of what you hear from Donald Trump, and to back up for a moment, we should be fair, a lot of the candidates haven't presented detailed policy positions.
You're absolutely right. They're
now.
all great at the promises without the plans.
But at least in theory, the numbers add up. They say they'll fill in the details later, but the general numbers add up. In Donald Trump's case, even the general idea of it kind of doesn't pass the basic logic test for a lot of experts, and in particular, a lot of his ideas seem to come down to it'll work because I'm the president. So,
as you all said in the article, his response often is, "Let me figure it out." As you say, just I'll do it when I get to be president, and move on. Don't question it too much.
Well, and his team will say that he does have detailed policy plans. They're just not sharing them with us yet, is what they say.
We're not allowed to see them. Well, let's switch to the Democratic side because there was was so much talk over the weekend about whether or not Vice President Joe Biden might actually get into this race. All started by that New York Times article by Maureen Dowd saying that it was something that his son, Beau Biden, begged him to do as Beau Biden was dying, and saying to his father that he didn't want to see it just go to the Clintons automatically. Very powerful stuff. We're hearing from a lot of different people weighing in on this, but we're not hearing from Joe Biden himself. What are you hearing behind the scenes? Is he going to come out and say anything?
Well, look, you know, Joe Biden has been saying all year long that he was going to make his decision about a presidential run sometime around this time, July, August. But of course, the death of his son, Beau, really kind of put a wrench in all of the process here. He's been dealing with his grief. He's pulled away from public life a bit. He hadn't been appearing as much with as much of an active schedule. And so only now, it seems, is he kind of really engaging in the idea that he'd put aside for a little while there. One kind of interesting move is that a key Biden aide, Josh Alcorn, has gone over to the draft Biden movement, which until now had absolutely no Biden buy-in. Josh Alcorn, of course, was not currently working for Biden, but he had been a trusted aide, and so to have him at least be connected to the movement in any way makes some Democrats excited.
I think one thing that's simple to say is all of this talk about Biden indicates that there are some concerns in the Democratic side that Hillary Clinton has not sealed the deal just yet with voters. So it will be interesting to come. But we've got a whole year ahead of us, so let's keep it interesting. Rebecca Sinderbrand, political news editor for The Washington Post, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.